Now, we're moving into, staying in the theme of collaboration, of course, it is our theme, and we're going to meet three, you could say, startups, the young guns of the world who are doing amazing stuff, not now, but have for quite a while now. We're going to hear their stories through the chairmanship of Kat, who's back to look after this. Let me introduce you firstly to our three guests. Firstly, Jock Fairweather. Jock is the director of Little Tokyo 2. The last 7 years... Jock, put your hand up. Yep, okay. The last 7 years have seen him travel across the globe, socialising with some of the world's most modern fashion designers and building a women's luxury shoe label that broke records within the fashion industry. Do you want to know more about that? Yeah. All right, we'll devote a few minutes to that, please, Jock. Okay. Jock is he's back in Brisbane building innovative businesses within a collaborative ecosystem where people from all walks of life use his space to collaborate, to innovate and succeed working on their projects, and can't wait to hear all about that. So Jock is with us this afternoon. We're absolutely delighted. Also, Ben Hamley, he's the partner and strategy designer of Business Models Incorporated. He sits on the board of Uplit, and they're the producers of the Brisbane Writers' Festival, which is on at the moment, and has worked for some of the biggest and fastest moving creative businesses in the country, including Joseph Mark and the Queensland Museum. So welcome, Ben, and can't wait to hear your story as well. And finally, Adrian Osman. Adrian is a serial business builder. He's the co-founder and CEO of Pitchblak, and they're a unique startup studio that helps entrepreneurs launch ideas, access funding, and build world-class products across Australia, New Zealand, and Europe. And he has a story to tell as well. So I can't wait for this one. Will you please welcome all three? And chaired by Kat. Over to you.
So I said in jest in the earlier fireside chat with Rob that amongst the many buzzwords that we can also use as drinking games, we have startups, innovation and entrepreneurialism. Ecosystems is another one as well. When I was asked to pull together this conversation around how do we learn how to innovate through collaboration, these three gents came straight to mind. I'm going to give you a heads up. You're not necessarily going to sit here in this next session and hear a recipe for collaboration or a recipe for innovation. What you're going to hear is stories and snippets, but best of all, in a good panel conversation, what I hope you will hear are the spaces. The spaces in between the stories, like the spaces in between the notes that make the music. So just let your mind go wherever it goes, be sparked, be inspired, be fueled. Don't struggle to kind of keep up with all of the stories, and sometimes you might not even necessarily want to have a pen in your hand, rather you might just want to go...
A drink in your hand would help.
A drink in your hand would help, but we're getting to that. We need to get through a few things. These three gents all work together in various forms, in very collaborative ways. They don't work in the same businesses, but their paths cross all of the time. And likewise, my path gets to cross with them all the time as well. So that's why I've brought them together for this particular conversation. So before I get into my questions, I want to know, well, I want the audience to know a bit more about each of you. Since shoes are a hot topic for many of us in the room, how about you kick off, Jock? Tell us about your story. Who are you? How did you become one of the most successful shoe designers in the world? And why are you creating co-working spaces now when you could have kept women happy for many, many years?
I always wanted to design women's shoes or play rugby for Australia, and I did play rugby for Australia. And I broke my back, and then as a hobby I was drawing women's shoes. And anyway, I got into London College of Fashion and went there. But basically, the reason I was successful in the first place at university was working really, really hard. So I went to a shoe manufacturer just outside of London, which is where I studied. And I said to them, I'll work for you every weekend for the next 3.5 years when I'm studying. But when I want to launch the shoe company, you have to build or create the entire first collection for free in return for all of this free work that I do. And they said yes. So basically, when I went to present my final collection, I presented what you would show in New York Fashion Show. I literally presented what I presented to the board of London College of Fashion, what I did present to New York, London, Paris, and Milan Fashion Weeks, like in the next 6 months. And then I basically put all my stuff in a shoe-case and just wheeled it around Europe and made my way into stores. And I think part of the whole entrepreneurship piece is you have to make things out of nothing. You have to be very resourceful. And if that took me LinkedIn and who the buyer was at David Jones and trying to get up to their floor and lying to security guards and throwing shoes at them and doing anything it took, I was going to do it for my shoes to get in there.
So you hustled?
I hustled for sure. All 25 stores that I got into, I did something like that. But basically my trick for the collection was I'd spend time in and around that store because it took time to get to the buyer because often they wouldn't let me meet the buyer. And so I'd wait in the cafes and I'd start making friends, and suddenly I'd see the buyer walk out of the store and I'd just like buy them a coffee, and I was just a shoe designer. And anyway, I spent time around those places and I made friends around all 25 of those stores. And when the shoes were going to get delivered, I'd message them all and say, hey, go and check out my shoes, bring all your friends. And for the first time ever, 100% sell out, all 25 stores, first season, never been done before. Then I met a Swiss luxury conglomerate, or the owner of one, sold 75% of that company when I was 21 for a good amount of money for a 21-year-old. And then basically I was going to work or design 2 days a year and then screw around in Europe for 363 days a year, which was pretty awesome. But I grew up in the developing world on a more serious note, literally on a wooden floor with pillows with 8 native kids, Papua New Guinea, 8 years. We had literally less than no money. And I went from that to being on Diane von Furstenberg super yacht in Saint-Tropez. And that 363 days that I had to think really made me think about, I don't know, why I existed. And all my parents did all the developing world work and I was doing this ridiculous stuff. And so anyway, after a while, the shoe thing went downhill because the Swiss equity group couldn't handle the production. And I came back to Australia, Brisbane, which was my hometown. And I basically just wanted to clear my head. I had friends that had small businesses but were all too busy to play golf with me. And so I started asking them questions, and they all said the same stuff I hear every single day. I've spent all this money and got nowhere. No one's giving me guidance. I'm lonely, bored, lost at home. All my services spread out, whatever. I said, I'll buy a house. You all live there, pay me rent, and I'll be your BDM. If you want to meet Kat or the CEO of Optus or Ben or Adrian or whoever, I'll make it happen. If you want to learn something, I'll bring that person in to teach you guys as a group. And they said, cool. And organically, we evolved into what Little Tokyo 2 is. And so it's 19 months we've been going now-ish. We're about to open our 5th space with Kat and Brisbane marketing team in the capital. We've got well over 500 businesses that work in our spaces. We've got a 0% fail rate so far, because if you come to us and say, I literally can't pay my house rent, let alone Little Tokyo membership, which is really nominal, we'll literally go out and find that work for you. We've facilitated 16 investments, 34 groups have outgrown us, and we've done the entire thing, literally the entire thing, through working with these guys, Jordan Duffy, and some other really great groups like Uber, Flight Centre, all the chambers and things like that. But I think that's enough from me. I'll speak about collaboration in more depth later.
That's such a cool story. Before the other two join in, can people from Brisbane marketing take some happy snaps of this panel? One, because it's extraordinary to get the three of them sitting still for this long. And two, because they're actually not old enough to have a portfolio of photos built up of them doing this kind of work. It's fucking true. Adrian, what's your story?
Okay. Hi guys. Originally about 6 years ago, I've come from a background of being in agencies actually, so spend a lot of time understanding how one talented team could do repetitive stuff over and over again really well for brands. So it started there, and I think my story started with immaturity really. I actually just was notorious for arguing with my bosses. I was inevitably always going to end up not having a boss because I was just argued with them too much. I was always the manager. I'd argue my way into being the manager, but I did annoy them a fair bit. So I went out on my own. I found a business partner and went out on my own pretty young, 19, I think, yeah, or 20. And we had some crazy ideas that were some in the media and advertising space that I was used to, but also a fair bit of software platform ideas. So we had a crack at that. We sucked. We were really bad at it. Mainly because the ideas were actually great, but I think startups are all about execution. There's a lot of people that have, obviously, I think a lot of you here would have great ideas, but it's about how you then turn that into something. So, and me and my business partner are probably not that talented at anything in particular. So very quickly we realised that if we wanted to build something that would last, we would need to wrap a good team around us. So we got a few boring cash flow businesses going that could pay the bills, and then we spent a lot of time, probably my only talent is recruitment, finding amazing people. So I spent a lot of time finding the right people that would join this crusade, even though we had nothing to show for it at the time. People that like designers, developers, copywriters, marketers, all these sort of people that are required to put together a great online business or app or whatever it might be. And that worked eventually. So we started getting, a couple of years ago, some of our startups started gaining traction. Now our own startups have just over 100 staff around the world across 8 offices. And we've raised just over $10 million in venture capital so far for our own one. So eventually went good because we just have amazing people that work for us. And then naturally, so we had no intention of becoming an institution that would help other people with their ideas. We were just having lots of fun starting cool things. But naturally, people around us started, like family, friends, started saying, "Hey, I've got this idea. Can your team help me, or can you help me get it off the ground?" So we spent about a year. Actually, yeah, for the last year and a bit, we've been now helping other entrepreneurs to avoid a shitty journey like we went through. It was lots of fun, but I don't think most people have the resilience to fail 10 times before you get it right. I'm actually really tired of hearing that. You see on Facebook those stories about, I saw one this morning, the PayPal dude was like, failed 4 times and then I made it. All this encouraging stuff about it's fine to fail and all that sort of stuff. And I think
It sucks to fail.
it sucks to fail.
And
like,
you can't pay the rent.
You can't pay the rent, and you know, if you have kids, which a lot of you here will, it's scary to fail if you do that. So I think the mission now for us is we found that we love helping other people do this just as much, if not more, as doing our own startups. And the mission now is helping people gain traction, get funding. We build their product. We act as their team. So I'm taking everything I learned from being in an agency, and we've got a small team of 15 that do all of those things for the other startups as well. That's growing really quickly, probably be 50 by June next year. And yeah, so I think the mission now is to, if someone has a great idea, even if they're not an experienced founder, and they're willing to take some risk and try this thing, I think they deserve for it to work the first time. It's going to take 5 years until it becomes a huge thing, but we just bust our ass to try and make it work for them. Make sure they get funding so they can pay themselves a wage, make sure our team wraps around them with some great talent so they're producing awesome products. So that's where we've ended up. Mainly software still, probably 10% physical product that we're working on. And as we grow as an institution, we'll end up doing everything. As we get more talent, we'll do engineering and health tech and medicine and everything once we get to a size that we can do that. But
So literally collaboration in motion.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Ben, lucky last.
Thanks.
Pledge, what's your story?
Okay, so
Who do you work with? And,
Who do you
what-
work for?
And what do you do?
So I work for a company called Business Models Inc. We're actually a Dutch strategy design company. So we were founded in Amsterdam back in 2008, and we were founded on the back of an international collaboration, really. So for those of you who've heard the words business model before, and I'm assuming most of you have because it's like buzz phrase du jour right now, there was a lot of buzz around business models in the early 90s into the 2000s. Largely what drove and ultimately collapsed the dot-com bubble was around e-commerce business models and actually access to Excel, because people could start like punching in different numbers and using their Windows 95 to like model different scenarios. And it created so much hype that no one really knew what anyone was talking about. And so one of our global founders, Alex Osterwalder, at the time was doing his PhD on exactly that. What does the concept of a business model actually mean? And he started to bring together a community of practice, people from around the world who are interested in this topic, and essentially put together a platform for everyone to collaborate on what these tools and techniques for understanding how businesses operate, and ultimately created this definition of what a business model is in a common language that we can use to compare different strategies, compare different ways in which we create, deliver, and capture value. And that ultimately ended up in the creation of a tool called the business model canvas. So for those of you who might be familiar with it, it's an A4 landscape piece of paper with 9 building blocks that help you understand how you create, deliver, and capture value. That tool was published in a book called Business Model Generation. We're Dutch, we're very literal, everything's straightforward.
Yep.
So Business Model Canvas, Business Model Generation, Business Models Inc.
And it works.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nothing else. But that book was a really early example of crowdfunding in action as well. So when it was published in 2007, 2008, we asked that community of practice who helped us author it, would a book be valuable? Do you even need a book to do what you do, to get this knowledge? And so we just put it open to them and said, how much would you pay? And a few people said 25, a couple of other people said 35, some others said 50. And we thought, well, this is actually really interesting. There's such a value differential here. Let's see what the maximum is. So we just started putting the price up by like $2 every day until people stopped buying it. And the last 10 to 20 people to pay for it bought it for $270.
It's worth that plus more.
So yeah, but
one of my favourite.
But what that tells you is there's something more valuable than the
Yeah.
book,
Yeah.
and what they were buying into was part of that community of practice. And if you get a copy of the book, the first 10 pages is like 470 names, everyone who is sort of co-contributed to that book. So Business Models Inc. has been built on collaboration. In fact, we're a firm of firms. We have a lot of friends of the firm who do work with us and contribute to the thought leadership. But ultimately, our purpose is to create a tool culture within business. So in, say, surgery or medicine, in carpentry and building, we have tools that we can use to get stuff done. And you learn those tools and you learn techniques. But when it comes to business and strategy, it's kind of like, I don't know, you got a good idea? Let's try that. So the business model canvas, the value proposition designer, a whole series of other tools and techniques for telling stories, for preparing pitches, for articulating your vision, for understanding your design criteria and what you want to focus on. That's what we do. And we consult and we collaborate with these guys and Kat, and we help to design better businesses. That's really what we do.
Awesome. So I said in the earlier panel that I truly believe that collaboration is one of the key capabilities of the economy moving forward for a whole host of reasons, but it's particularly a core competency and requirement for innovation. Can you guys each speak to why you believe collaboration is so important? And yeah, Jock's champing at the bit, I can see.
I'll just do a really quick one. I just realised that this panel is really interesting. This panel. This panel.
These
no,
two.
come on, Kat, we love you.
I know you love me, it's okay.
More than both of them. This guy, like, this is the kind of man. Sorry, let me pre-frame that. Everybody in the room is capable of innovation and collaboration. Okay. And this is how this works on this panel, and it does in real life too, external to this panel. This is 2 of my 3 best friends sitting on this panel. Ben Hamley is one of the smartest dudes I've ever met, period, if not the smartest guy. And he spends his entire life researching business models and innovative things that are happening. He's like a researcher on steroids, right? So he comes up with these insane ideas that may work. I'm like the king of curation, so I can pull in any different person with any different skill set and put them in the right room and give them the kind of magic that they need to produce something. And then we say, shit, we need someone to actually do it, and he executes it. That's pretty much how this panel works, and that's how 3 different forms of people that play in the collaboration space do.
Yeah.
And having watched them, neither one of you could do what you do together by yourselves.
Be much
You
harder.
wouldn't get to that end result. Certainly not with the level of volume or voltage. So now that you've said that, and that being true, why is collaboration important? I'm particularly looking at you, Adrian, in the context of like the startup factory model. Why is collaboration important? And how do you encourage your entrepreneurs who think they know freaking everything? How do you encourage them to share their ideas without necessarily knowing how it's going to spread?
That's a good question. Oh, my mic is working. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you're good.
I think, interestingly, in terms of where collaboration comes from as well, I think the reason that the startup early stage business space is known for it more so than larger end of town is we have less money when we start. So where collaboration comes from isn't just like, I'm a nice person, therefore I want to just be chummy and drink beers with these guys. It's often, I don't have a $2 million marketing budget this year to do shit. So how can I get that person over there and that company to help me get to this goal that we have? And in order to do that, obviously you can't just say, hey, can you please do this? Because that's just not how business works. So the question always ends up being, what could I do for that person that would make them feel like they've got a win from me, that would then make them feel like they almost owe me something, and then so that they can help me with my my thing as well. So it's that mindset. And it does take practice to learn how to do that, because it's like people are so scared of giving. It's always take. So it's, you have to. It takes doing it to realize that it comes back like nearly every time. It's very rare that you do something good for someone and it doesn't come back around. So it's just a practice. And then in terms of your second question, how do you encourage entrepreneurs? Yeah, we work with a very difficult customer base. It's like infants, right? Like in Australia particularly.
They are.
You nicknamed us, Monica nicknames us the daycare for entrepreneurs. It's like, shit, I guess. I've never put it that way.
That's worse than puppy preschool, I tell you.
Yeah, that's what we are. So it takes time. 9 out of 10 entrepreneurs that work with us are scared of their idea being stolen. Not by us, because we signed their shitty form that doesn't even work anyways. But, and they think they're fine, but I think... Yeah. And then we steal it? No, never. We got enough of our own. I think it's just about reprogramming their mind to think in that same way, and it does help again that they have very little money, so we help them get funding, yes, but we'll be monitoring. Like, big part of our process is saying these are the suggested strategic partners that you should align with. So we help do that thinking for them in the early stages, so they can start learning it, and then we tell them how to reach out and how the other people could get a win and everything. So it just takes time. Yeah.
How do you help customers or clients, Ben, figure out why or where the value lies in collaborating when they don't necessarily know the outcome? Because I have the same thing. People come to me and they say, we want you to sign the NDA or the non-disclosure agreement. I'm going, if that, whatever. And then they'll spend months trying to figure out who's going to get what piece of the pie if this thing that doesn't exist yet might become successful. How do you, in that early stage, help people figure out?
So one of the things about collaboration and just ideas in general, and there's like amazing Instagram quotes you could get up the wazoo about it, but like one of the famous ones from Steve Jobs was, creativity is just connecting things.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that people often don't realise is their ability to see the opportunity in the connections. So the act of collaboration doesn't necessarily give you any immediate reward, but what it does do is it positions you in the right place to have those adjacent opportunities to just act on when the time's right. And so it's a function of the network, and it's also an emergent property that you can't see all of from your individual position. It requires you to take a higher level and think about all of the different relationships that everyone has and what their interests are and where they are positioned in a community. And there's very good evidence for that abundant mindset. Like when you were talking before about this concept of people trying to protect their own IP and basically take rather than give. It's very common. It's traditional kind of
small business
thinking. Small business mindset,
and
but also
scarcity thinking.
Yeah,
it's
so
not enough.
Economics of scarcity, right? Like if I have it, you don't, therefore I win, and that's good for me. But when you look at it, the evidence is completely the opposite. So one of our data science partners in San Fran, Eric Burlow, he's a fellow of the TED conference, and his PhD supervisor was what's his name? Cesar Hidalgo, who runs MIT's Atlas of Media Lab, MIT Media Lab Atlas of Economic Complexity. It's a bit of a mouthful.
The fact that he could remember it off
right?
the top of his head.
But like these two guys are like the founders of network theory. Like they literally wrote it. Not Caesar, but his other dude. I can't remember his name. I'll tweet it later. Okay. But the Atlas of Economic Complexity has a 5 times better predictive effect at predicting economic growth than the World Economic Forum's benchmark of global competitiveness. And it measures the complexity of an ecosystem, which is a function of the dynamic numbers of relationships and inter-business collaborations. So if you needed any more evidence that collaboration is good for you, whether it's for yourself or for the whole economy, that's it.
That's so cool. Can you tweet that out later? So, because
Yeah.
I told everyone to put.
You
their
got that
pens
right,
down.
yeah.
Yeah, I told everyone to put their pens down. I just made the note.
Yeah.
What the? How about you, Jock? How do you encourage people to be more collaborative when they don't necessarily understand how it all works? And do you tell them, or do you just lead by example?
Lead by example for sure, but I mean our spaces are the catalyst for it. And I had a walkthrough today actually, and he said I'm missing X, Y, and Z in my screen printing company. Yeah, they've been doing 100% year-on-year growth or something, doing really well. And he said I'm missing X, Y, Z, and I said out on that main table we just walked past, there's a guy with like Australia's first charity beer company. There's the best developer I've ever met. There's a lady who runs a cafe. I can't remember what else I said, but those three were definitely of the 5. I was like, if you sat at the table, imagine how many things you could learn or how many shirts you could just print for those 5 businesses literally sitting there. And I think that's as simple as it is. And if I want to get slightly more complex with maybe some of these relationships, the tender for the capital came out. And I knew who the other competitors were to get in on this big, amazing project in the city with Brisbane Marketing, Brisbane City Council. And I knew what they were going to do because they're all vanilla as hell. And I knew what the whole ecosystem had because I'd spent literally the last 2 years just exploring it and trying to meet every single person I ever could, which was 10 a day, every day, which I legit did. And anyway, I approached Brisbane Marketing and Brisbane City Council, probably with the worst tender of all of them. But I said, look, here is what we've done, and here's who we've done it with. And it was a list of 112 businesses that we've worked with to create these kinds of outcomes. 112 different businesses, not within our community, like external. And then I said, pretty much we can make anything happen that you want. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a blank slate tender. And we're going to say, you can tell us what you want, but we think that this is the future of the city and what this building could be. And we know that in the ecosystem, there's not a place for mentors, VCs, scaling startups, or corporate innovation teams. We know none of those exist. And they all could be part of one building that under them had all the startups innovating, and under that had all of the public getting involved and seeing and being inspired by what's being created by that level, of which is being advised and invested in by that level. And that's how we won the tender. Literally changing everything that we ever did in our first 3 buildings and saying, we're happy to change that to suit what you guys need. And lo and behold, it's, well, so far, so good.
So far, indeed. I raised the average age of this particular panel conversation by way too much for my liking. Is a collaborative and an abundance mindset exclusive to you young folk, or can us oldies get it? And I know the answer, and I'm deliberately putting it facetiously, but we often do think that startups and collaboration and innovation all comes from the young people. Is that true?
No.
Yay.
Average successful startup is started by people that
39?
39 or 40.
Yep.
Yeah, and they have 2 kids by the time that they start it. Kids on skateboards are not that good at startups. Yeah, they're pretty shit.
But parents of kids on skateboards, different
good.
conversations.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
It just learning skills at an older age just takes more effort. That's all.
There's a lot of ego, sort of hype in startup culture,
Yeah.
which I think we're having a hard time reconciling at the moment, and particularly because we have so much federal and state and local innovation agendas that are all competing for airtime. It's very easy to get swept up in that noise. And so, of course, you've got to inspire a young generation to have a go. But the most important thing is that they need to develop enterprising, transferable skills. They don't have to start a business to do that. And to your point about like the 10 failures, like the concept of failing fast and failing early does not mean blow your business up.
It's
repeatedly.
just testing ideas.
Test an
testing
idea,
or-
How
it's
can
like a
you,
scientist.
How can you fail the experiment so that you, because that is the scientific method. Find out every way that doesn't work before you can prove that your alternative hypothesis is correct.
Yes. Yes, that works well.
I think, yes, that works well. I think
the only way.
some of the, so we have 14-year-olds, we have 14-year-olds in our space, up to 69. And most of the ones, like, let's just say 55 and above are mentors. And they're amazing people, ex-CFO of Microsoft, stuff like that, ex-CEO of Energex, whatever. And they come and they spend their time in the space all the time for free, actually because they get the energy from the younger ones, because the younger ones are so keen and whatever. But the younger ones come so they can sit and ask the CFO and so on all these ridiculous questions to try and steal golden nuggets. And that's how we have such a vast variety of people in our spaces and why they keep turning up. Today I had to sit at a freaking cafe because I couldn't sit in a seat in the place.
That's awesome.
Because there was a bunch of 14-year-olds and 69-year-olds. No, I'm just playing
Skateboarding around.
That's
bloody skateboard.
But also in that lies, I think that's one of those entrepreneur or the collaborative mindset. The reason I love doing panel conversations is because I have no freaking idea where the conversation's going to go. But out of this conversation, similar to your mentors, because somebody's been sucking the information out of their heads and asking different questions, all those other ideas pop off in your head. You know, you're not just sitting in the same thing going, oh yeah, more of the same. So what are the barriers to quality collaboration that you guys have to keep removing? So moving away, I guess, from the mindset perspective, but what gets in the way?
There's a good one. Time. Time. So
Yeah, because it takes a while.
I've grown my businesses the most by getting drunk with people.
Yep. Totes.
Me and Jock love to drink like 10 litres of beer in a row, just sinking beers.
But it's from the Good Beer Co. And if you drink a whole carton, it saves a square metre of the Barrier Reef.
That's the best plug I think I've heard all day. Yeah.
He's only saying that because he's about to invest into them, I think. But I actually still don't. My business partner is even more retarded than me. He's just like terrible. No actual skills, but he's the best networker I know. So he naturally will spend a big chunk of his week having beers with people. But he's doing amazing things now. He's silent in my business and he's doing another one that we part own. But it's hard. And I was texting him about this morning actually, and I was just saying, I need to just get drunk with people more often. Like that's when you look at the revenue and the growth and the key people that we meet and all of the important stuff, all of it, I'm just like, oh, there's like these 10 people and all of that activity is they're just the 10 people I've got drunk with the most. And then these 80 people over here I haven't got drunk with yet, so I need to go get drunk with them. That's true.
I met the Swiss equity guy who invested in my shoe or bought 75% of my shoe company while I was drunk at a bar. But I think there's something maybe a little bit more in depth to it than just who I got pissed with is who I'm doing stuff with. And I think the biggest barrier actually to it is like quality and having like parallel visions or the same vision. Purpose. Because I honestly did meet 10 people a day for the first year of LT2. I did 3,000 one-on-ones for LT2, external of meeting Cat and stuff like that. So that's like another 1,000. And you really do have to filter because otherwise all these people get on board and the quality drops and the time increases and a lot of things do happen. And if you do find people that complement your business, which is what it has to be, and you get along and have the same vision with, then you start spending more and more time with them and getting more drunk with them, like these guys.
Mm.
Yeah. And I wholeheartily agree because I see the same thing. It's not necessarily getting the drunk part, but it's allowing those soft conversations,
which
not the hard agenda.
Helps.
Beer absolutely helps. Or vodka, gin, whiskey, wine.
Yeah.
Also green tea, like for, you know. Whatever, it's the quality time that counts.
I think where I was going with that is because some people might not drink here. It's just I've noticed that I have a lot of meetings with people that a lot of great things can happen. Like every meeting, it's easy if you're a good collaborator. Every meeting, it's very easy to identify within a minute where you can collaborate, but it just never seems to happen until you get drunk together, which I think is just about having a relationship with someone. It's not about getting drunk. That's just how we like to build our relationship. But it's like, what could you do together that isn't a meeting in one of your offices with those people? Is it an event? Is it some sort of, like, what can you do that is not businessy? Because that's when you form the friendship and that's what puts you on the like, he's always on my mind.
Aww. That's so sweet.
But because we're good mates, but maybe more. But you only think, who are you going to think about during the day? You're only going to think about the people that you're close with, and you want to help their businesses the most. So flipping that, the people that you want to do stuff for you, do they care about you? Are they thinking about you? And if you've just had a 1 hour meeting with them and identified some stuff formally and written a little to-do list, do you think they're actually going to think about you?
And I'm going to jump in here too. I think this is actually one of the key issues. We often try to force collaboration with people who look like they could be good collaborators because we're working on the same agenda. But unless you click with them, it's pushing shit uphill.
Yeah.
Like it's just there's not the need or the desire to keep coming back.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just like what Jock was saying. It's not aligned purpose or vision. Yeah. And I think other than time, I think one of the other big blockers is control. Like the way we work traditionally in businesses today is not set up to do the types of work we need to do to solve the problems of tomorrow. Yeah. And we're moving from a world in which everything was about scalable efficiency. So you have top-down command and control. We set the agenda, you do the work, and then go back up the line and tell me how well the work was done, and then we'll go back down the line and tell you what more to do. And there's just not enough. That is not efficient enough at all. And if you look at all of the trends, workforce trends, population trends, demographic trends, everything to do with young people these days, the thing that they are choosing where to work and what to work on is based on purpose. People will turn down Big Four stable jobs on the basis that they have no concept of their actual human impact or their social impact. And people want something more meaningful out of it. I mean, we've had a bit of a wave of social enterprise, not-for-profit, and a whole bunch of other very successful brands like Thank You Water and Good Beer Co. and these kinds of activities. But we've had to call it social enterprise for people to understand what the thing is. We don't call everything else anti-social enterprise, but it kind of is because we have to call it that. And so where we're moving now is into this new sort of paradigm of scalable adaptability. And it's where you have self-organizing teams and you may not have everyone under your control, but you don't need that if they're aligned to a common purpose. And you know that it's not managing to do things right, it's managing to do the right things. And getting people aligned so that they can actually do that for themselves is ultimately that's what's going to drive the collaboration. You don't have to tell them what to do.
I love it. I'm going to go to the audience for questions. If you quickly get your hand up now, I won't ask my next one. There is one, Juliet. Juliet's got a question.
I think it's pretty classic what I said at the start because he says all these really big words we don't understand. Yeah. And then I pick bits and pieces of them and put them together, whisper them to Adrian, and then he just cuts the bullshit and goes, yeah, we just got drunk and came up with this idea. Perfect. Nailed it.
Juliet has a question.
I'm sure there's a lot of people in the room with ideas, so it'd be great to get, I know that you said there's no magic formula that we're going to get at the start, Kat, but it'd be great to get some tips on how you do test those ideas. What's the pathway to actually find out if you've got something good?
So when people come in and pitch us ideas every week, like sometimes a lot a day, and ideas are completely meaningless. It's like, are you talking about startup ideas or? Yeah, cool, because ideas is pretty vague. It has to solve. We only care about problems and insights. So what's that layer above it? Like, sometimes they just tell me the idea. I'm like, but what's it? Why? What's it solving? What? I don't understand that. An app. I wrote a blog about this the other day. An app that finds the closest hairdresser is a shit idea because. How do you do it currently? You go onto Google and you type West End hairdresser. It takes 6 seconds. Why would you download an app to replace that process? So it needs to be a true problem and insight. And that's a great starting point. And then once you come up with the idea, it's a craft. These guys would be way better at it than us, I reckon. But there's a craft in turning those insights and problems into an idea. And that's a skill like riding a bike. So it's actually about assume the way you converted that problem into the idea was wrong the first time. And that you might need to iterate, and just from a strategy perspective, not starting or building or designing anything, just from a strategy perspective and workshopping, you'll have to redo that a bunch of times. Ask other people their opinion, get feedback directly from the people who are affected by the problem. I've got like a dude that has a fashion app, who's a guy that isn't a cross-dresser, so he has to get really close to chicks and talk about fashion to understand their customer base. So there's a few tips.
Yeah, the problem space, understanding the problem space before you go into the solution space is really important. We've just written a book about this. It's called Design.
Where did that come from?
Here's one I prepared earlier. Where did that even come from? It's called Design a Better Business. It's out next month, wiley.com.
Awesome.
So the process is, you have a point of view and there's an idea about the way the world works or something that you want to solve, a problem you want to solve, or someone you want to help. With that point of view, you can only do so much. You then have to understand both the jobs that your customers have to get done. Like, people don't wake up one day and want to buy your product. They wake up and they have problems they need to solve or jobs they need to get done. And how valuable your product or service is only a function of how well it does that job, as well as overcoming the obstacles to getting the job done that they might face in a way that they couldn't have overcome themselves, and create some sort of benefit or gain for them. And then, once you've got problem solution fit, if you can get it into a business model that can do it differently or more cost effectively or faster than anyone else, then you can move through those cycles. But you need to understand the world first in a really robust way. In the same way that if you are learning a new musical instrument, you don't wake up the first day and compose a symphony. You play everyone else's music first. So your idea is as worthless as its execution, but it's also as worthless as your sort of understanding of the world it operates in, how it will actually work. And then once you have all these ideas, actually being scientific about them and building a prototype. You don't have to have the whole app developed to test it. You can mock it up with like just paper and say like you would click here and then you do that. Or if it's an experience, like just mock it up in a room and validate it with real people and take that scientific approach to formulating what your assumption is, understanding exactly what you want to prove, like how is it you're measuring truth, and then what's your threshold for truth? Like if you still only get 50-50 when you do your experiment, then change it. Like, and that's the process.
And ask people how much they would pay if you were able to solve that problem for them. Not would they pay, because everyone will say, oh yeah, that sounds like a great idea. How much would you pay if I could solve this problem for you? And you'll get an insight into whether it's a valuable idea, a $270 book, or whether, oh no, I just want that as a free app on my phone. Is that a hand up at the back? Or a stretch? That was a stretch. It was a fine. I've got another time for another question, or one more question, depending how long boys take to answer. Another question? Okay, I'll ask one then. One of the things that I think people find particularly daunting and overwhelming about this style of conversation, particularly those of us who are a bit older, we've been trained with CRM systems, sales pipelines, tracking your conversations, busy full diaries as it is. How on earth do you keep track of all this stuff? I listen to you, Ben, and I think I don't have enough space in my head to store that information, let alone pull it out when I need it. How do you keep track of such a complex web of information and then make the relevant connections?
People or information?
Like it's a bit of both. It's a bit of both.
Yeah, I think it's there are tricks to doing it, and it's not memory. You don't have to memorize everything. It's actually about knowing the right search techniques. So who would you actually go and ask to help? That's probably one of the things that to get the information you need.
Jock's got a smart-ass response. No?
Yeah, I remember we were just walking. I think we were walking from a coffee back to State Library Queensland. We do mentoring there. And I said, Ben, how do you just keep up with so much stuff and make sure that you perform so well each time? And he said, to be honest, I just don't really give a fuck. I just turn up and do it. He did say that. Under the bus. He actually did say that. But that's all credit to him.
It is true.
No, but and I'm exactly the same. Not that I don't give a fuck, but I've practiced like strategic agility for so long that if I have to come up and do an hour keynote, I can just wing the entire thing, and it will be authentic, but it will seem authentic and planned and so on. And you can get to that kind of stage. It's just like riding the bike and going through this process. It's just practice. And pitching your idea is just like practice, and everything, you're just practicing it all.
Yeah. And again, that's around that softness again. It's not necessarily knowing where it's going to land. It's just trusting that when the time comes, you'll be able to call on it again.
Yeah, and I think coming back to one of the points you made before about blockers, and it is a function, it's a quality of the environments you put yourself in, and also giving yourself permission. I mean, one of my fundamental values in everything I do is seek forgiveness, not permission. So just try and do it first, and then if it doesn't work, say sorry. But we spend.
I'm not allowed to do that. Sorry.
We spend so much time doing stuff which is not good for good ideas. Like we just spend all this time in meetings that we don't prepare for that end up in more meetings. And the kinds of workshops that we run, they're only like a day, half a day, at the most 2 days. And where we get with people in terms of the amount of thinking and the concepts that they've developed to change their business and pivot their whole strategy, they do that in 2 days. And if you think about how long they've been brewing that problem for, it's usually measured in years. Yeah, years. Yeah, and it's because we spend so much time doing the busy work, and we think that the time out to think about the model of value creation and the world around us is like being lazy or not actually doing the work. And it's just totally ludicrous. We don't understand what the actual work of collaboration is, and it's not Excel.
And it's not busyness.
Yeah.
It's producing stuff.
Excel's great, though. I love it.
As a tool to help.
I just love numbers.
Okay.
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 Okay. Yeah.
Is there a final question from the room? Oh, Bureaux, I knew I could count on you.
There we go.
There's so many talks about entrepreneurship, and as we all know, it's 20 or 30% of the population does entrepreneurship. Not everybody can be entrepreneur. There's not much emphasis that's given on entrepreneurship. You can have your own shop in a company. How do you incentivize in an intangible way to employees that do the entrepreneur?
So I'm gonna repeat the question with the mic because we couldn't get the mic to Bureaux fast enough. So the question is, there's a lot of focus and talk and narrative at the moment about the importance of entrepreneurs. But of course, that's only a small part of the population who are ever going to be entrepreneurial. And God knows we actually need entrepreneurs as well within the existing organisations to be entrepreneurial, but not necessarily want to do it without the boss, but actually create something new. So the question is, how do we incentivise those people to do the really awesome stuff?
I've got an idea.
Inside, go.
It's a plug for you guys.
Sweet.
Entrepreneurs within a company, it works the best when you exclude that team from the normal work culture. Plug for the capital opening up soon.
Yeah, come
but
the capital.
Whack them in a co-working space with entrepreneurs, but still pay them a salary, and they get to pretend like they're an entrepreneur, but they're an intrapreneur, and they're just
what I do every day.
Part of the same group, because it's really hard. And I know that larger companies are doing a better job now of making more creative working environments now, so it's moving in the right direction, but I definitely think fully excluding them is a great way of incentivising that sort of growth. Yeah,
I agree. Jock? Ben?
Said it.
I think if you take entrepreneurialism as a behaviour, like what are the behaviours that contribute to that outcome of having entrepreneurs in the company? Like ultimately, what are you trying to achieve there? I think the concept of switching it from entrepreneurial to intrapreneur it's really the same tools. It's not really the same tools. It's really the same skills and mindset. You're acting like an entrepreneur, but you're working within a company. So in exactly the same way as you'd be starting a business, you need to be running experiments on the work that you're doing and who you're doing it for. And if your customer is your manager, how are you creating value for them? And trying to break some of the cultural paradigms of organizations around command and control are extraordinarily difficult, but you can only try by breaking it, I think.
And let them make mistakes. In a normal company, a division has KPIs to hit, and they can't fuck up. They need to do that. So that one department, innovation departments, all these things that are building now, you need to let people make mistakes because that's what entrepreneurs do. It's mistakes.
Great place to start would be walk around everyone in your office, ask what the purpose, vision, and values of your company are. And if you don't get exactly the same answer every single time, you're not going to get entrepreneurship.
Yep. Spot on. On that, I'm going to wrap up the conversation because I'm aware that we're about to have our final speaker for the afternoon. But would you please help me in thanking the guys on what I hope was a really interesting and engaging conversation.
Good job. Well done.